You're listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
And we're into the podcast. We're going into the podcast. The podcast has begun and we are going into it. Okay.
Only just begun.
Do you remember that song?
I do, but do you know where I remember that song from?
From what?
From 1408.
Is that a...
It's a scary Stephen King book.
Okay.
/ movie.
Did they sing that song in the book?
I didn't read the book, but it's from a book. I just watched the movie, but probably. I don't know if they did or not. I didn't read the book. I can't read Stephen King anymore.
At all?
At all.
Like, you see blank pages when you open it up?
Oh, no. I just my wavelengths, like I can't handle that kind of dark and twisted anymore. Yeah. I used to eat it up. Now I'm like, that's okay. I'll pass. So
we have a topic that I want to explore with you.
Yes.
So it comes from some lady's theory that basically there's a pattern over the course of time, history and everything like that, like the fall of the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, that starts to decline as culture begins. As culture begins to decline, you have an effervescence of transgender phenomenon. So basically the idea that as gender starts to become less binary and more on the full spectrum of what gender can be, that is one thing that leads to the downfall and the ending of a culture and or society.
This is from the Greek and the Roman Empire.
Not just the Greek and the Roman Empire, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's like the belief or the thought
that this person is saying.
That this person, Camille Paglia, she's an author. I don't know the books that she's written or anything like that. And I've heard it elsewhere. I don't know if it's out there in the scope of other literature or other people.
Okay.
Right. But it's something that I've heard lately. And that the belief is that because our culture right now, mm-hmm. Western culture, society, everything over here in the US is so highly focused into this space of not just the transgender movement or the transgender rights or everything like that, but the separation from the binary masculine and feminine, he, she, him, her, and that it's now into this much more broader spectrum, and that this will eventually lead to the downfall of our culture. And not just our culture, but our society as a whole. That basically this is the end. This is what happens right before the end. And that if we need to correct course, then we have to bring back this, do you know what I mean? Strengthen the binary of masculine and feminine.
That's the theory they're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this sparked a lot. This sparked, yeah.
Like who's up? Are you going your thoughts first or my thoughts first?
Well, do you feel like we have explained it enough? I guess I don't know.
Well, I'm not. I don't know if we've explained. First of all, do
you understand what the concept is that I'm trying to express?
From what I'm understanding, is this Camille, whatever last name, has made a claim, has a theory that gender fluidity is the symbolism of the fall of a culture, and that she's saying like the Greeks and the Romans, like this is something that that their culture experienced before they fell, before the end of their empire. And with that happening in this is like making sure my understanding is right. And with that happening in Western civilization is symbolizing the fall of Western culture, and that we need to strengthen the binary again in order to persevere as a culture. Did I understand that?
Yeah. Like if we're going to save this Western culture, then... I mean, that's
what she said.
That's not what she says.
That's not what she says, because I am like a level 10 of heated right now. So I didn't understand that right.
Well, You understood the first part of it, and the
Okay.
second part is my assumption.
Okay.
But the assumption is that if we're going to correct the course, then we would need to strengthen back towards the binary, the masculine and feminine. That's not my opinion.
That's not your opinion. Okay.
That's not my
You
opinion.
think
by
that's
any
what they're
means.
leading to without
Yes.
saying that?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's that all of this, over the last decade or so, and really within the last 5 years, all of this movement to get away from he, she, and the they, and all the transgender things that are happening, all of this is leading to the downfall. And in order to course correct, then to go back to...
This is hate.
Well...
That's the only thing. So am I listening or am I speaking?
Please speak.
So this is why I'm calling bullshit on this, and even with my very limited information here, because I have a lot more to learn in this space. But just based off of the very limited information that I have, I can already call bullshit on this conservative Christian theory that I feel pretty safe to feel like that's the area that's coming from. Whether or not there was gender fluidity and showing in these, like, I don't know that, but something that I have heard expressed a lot through, make sure I have I've heard a lot of, like, from, we'll just say, creators and social media and people that are putting their voices out there. I follow a lot of Native and Indigenous culture people that speak to this.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I have heard expressed and what I am learning from them is that this is the way, like, this isn't a new thing. I'm so hesitant to speak because I feel like I don't have the right to speak on behalf. So I'm trying to not mess up my words, but I'm going to mess them up, and I'm just going to say it the way that I understood it, knowing that I'm probably getting things wrong, and I'm going to do the best I can to show up in this moment.
Yeah.
That gender is not something that was recognized. It wasn't like how they do the ever formal version of man, woman, male, female, those terms that are very difficult to say. That wasn't a thing. It was like the energies that they have. It's whatever energies the body. They didn't have a binary gender platform. It was the people, it was the spirits, and there could be the feminine energy would embody one that had you would say, a man body, or however. That this is like they're from the beginning. That this is like, that's how they embody. That's the way that their culture saw things. It was the energies. It was the people. It wasn't you are a man and you are a woman. Now I understand that that's like, there's so many different practices and beliefs that go through many different systems. So I don't have all the information, but just right there, they're like, they can debunk that because this has been something that has been natural. We were watching a show the other day, and I don't know if I didn't fact check this, but Everything All at Once Everywhere, is that what it was called? Mm-hmm. And the mother was trying to like go back and forth between English and Chinese, and she was getting the he, she's mixed up. Mm-hmm. And explained it as, I don't understand the he, she. In China, there's, or in Chinese, I think is how she said it, there's just one word for it. Mm-hmm. And so like all of this like separation is that. Okay. Where's your head at?
Where's my head at?
Yeah. I keep getting distracted in this. So I'm very hesitant to speak when I don't have all the information.
Right.
And I think it's better that I speak with the information that I have as opposed to staying quiet and know that I'm going to get it wrong. I'm going to say it wrong, but I'm going to keep learning and I'm going to come back and I'm going to try again.
Yeah.
But just staying quiet doesn't help.
Right.
Like that's the story that I've been given. Just be quiet. You're not helping. You know, if you don't know all of this, like reason I shouldn't speak. But I'm like, oh, I don't believe this. I feel like this is hate and this is fear and this is conformity and this is manipulation and this is just like.
It's the same old, same old. In my mind, right?
What do you mean?
So what I saw, just to kind of give you context for where I'm coming at, babe. Somebody posted something online, and it's this woman, this professor. Actually, I just saw that she's a professor at some universities. She's written some books. She's touted as a feminist, like self-proclaimed.
She's touted as a feminist?
Mm-hmm. And she speaks about this is the downfall or a sign or one indication, maybe not necessarily the cause of, but an indication that the civilization is going to be headed towards the end, that it's towards the downfall, where basically towards at the end phases of a civilization, gender becomes an issue. It becomes something that, you know, basically where we're at with it in today's world. So where we're at today in regards to gender is a sign that the would be an indication that the society is headed towards a downfall. Okay. So that's her argument. And then I saw somebody post something about it, and they were talking about the importance of that somehow like masculinity and the masculine, like just masculinity and man, like man stuff, being a man is getting, how can I articulate this in a way? So like we're making it not okay to be a man, and we're de-emasculating, and that's totally not the correct term, but like we're feminizing masculinity, and we're trying to make masculinity less masculine and make men less masculine. And it's, you know, men aren't as masculine as they were 50 years ago. And all of this stuff is leading towards basically like doing away with, like we're like in some way, shape or form, it's trying to do away, not just with gender, but also get rid of the masculine. Right? You're trying to emasculate the masculine. You're trying to make it more feminine. You're trying to keep it smaller. You're shaming all of these traits and these qualities that are very masculine, that if we lose these things, then it's going to lead to the end of the world, and it's going to be like the end of culture and society and everything like that. So it's like it has to stand up, and the masculine has to be strong and healthy and all of these things. And we have to really look at that it serves a purpose and it's got a role and all this kind of stuff. So I saw this, and it sparked my thoughts, and it sparked like this whole idea of toxic masculinity, and it's okay, like it's not okay to be a man, and all of this stuff that I feel like is getting spun and portrayed and viewed, and you get it from men and women, right? Like you have women that are like it's so confusing. But what I see it as, or how it hits me as, like the idea of maybe it led to the downfall of these civilizations because they weren't willing to embrace what it was actually trying to do. So instead of like accepting that, because if you think about it, this might not even be a fucking topic for this podcast because we're having such a hard time trying to get it formulated in our heads.
It's because it makes no sense. That's like that's not you. It's what she's like.
But it's like this thing where men won't go quietly into the dark. Like men will not allow women or culture or society to quiet them. And they have to like fight to stand up for this thing. Like, we're not going to sit quietly and let you get rid of masculinity and make masculinity bad and, make all of these things happen. And in doing so, wash away the importance of being a man and the importance of masculinity and all the things that men bring and healthy masculine, all of that stuff, right? And that to me is like the most asinine way to look at it. Do you know what I mean? It's like in order for things to work, I think, and in order for things to be balanced, like the masculine side of energy or culture or society or everything like that just has to shut the fuck up for a minute. And it's not to say like your voice isn't important and what you bring to the table isn't important and all those kind of different things. That's very, very important and necessary. And if you want to recreate everything that we've ever had, then keep thinking that you're trying to be squashed, right? Like transgender rights, transgender movement, everything that's happening with gender in this country doesn't mean suddenly that men aren't going to be men, or that there isn't a place for men, or that masculinity isn't important. It just means that there's not enough room for everybody to come sit down at the table together, right? It doesn't mean that suddenly it's going to be the downfall of society because we're moving away from two genders.
Right. I agree. I think it's not the fear of that, the civilization. They're trying to spin that to make it appear such. I think it's the fall of the patriarchy. It's the fall of the, like that rhetoric that you're saying, that controlling, domineering rhetoric, and bringing enough room for everyone. So the patriarchy's like inside. It's something that wasn't really inside. It was, and there wasn't a threat because they just had the power. It's what it was the rulership. It was however, and now the world is seeing patriarchy for the unhealthiness that it is. And that extreme dominance is not serving the collective. And so that means that a balance has to come. And with balance, other people, other energies get to rise. The patriarchy that has been in charge does not like that because they want the control. They want it. So now it's attacking, going back. So attacking race, attacking transgender, attacking LGBT, taking rights away from women. They are doing everything they can, waging war on everything other than the patriarchy, trying to show that it's the fall of it. And so this theory just sounds like another way to put fear in to keep the patriarchy alive. It's not society. It feels like a patriarchy thing.
Right. And also in my mind, like if that leads to the downfall of those civilizations, then maybe those civilizations should have fallen.
Yeah.
Right. Like if that's those civilizations that quote unquote had this as a precursor to the downfall of, maybe that's like, it's not a sign that civilization is ending. It's like if you're not able to make peace with that balancing that takes place and you struggle against it, then maybe your civilization should end.
Yeah. If you don't want anybody else at the table, maybe there's no room for you at the table.
Like the way that things have been done should come to an end.
Agreed so much.
And it's not like, oh God, we have to fight now to keep civilization. No, maybe this civilization needs to come to an end. And what I mean by that is, obviously I don't mean like the downfall and suddenly there's no longer Western society and culture and somehow this civilization goes into extinction, but the ways that with which the civilization has functioned and the ways that it has worked and the ways that it has been managed, maybe all of those things need to come to an end in order for things to continue to perpetuate and move forward in a healthier, balanced, more like, not even a balanced way, but like in a more productive way. Like we see this cycle repeated over and over and over and over and over again, right? And this woman has this theory that this is a precursor to the end of it. Well, maybe it's because as civilization expands and grows and evolves, it gets to a certain point where like it has to balance itself.
Yeah.
Because it's too top heavy, it's too masculine, it's too patriarchy, right? And so you start to see this bubble up as a way to balance it. And then one of the arguments is that like, so if the Roman Empire suddenly is very gender neutral, I guess we'll use just a silly term, then it's going to leave them susceptible to war and to be taken over by other cultures that are still very much binary in regards to the masculine being the leading force behind it, right? So if you no longer have that structure in place, then you're going to be susceptible to enemies from the outside because you don't have that strong masculine structure in place to protect everything. And it's like all of it in my mind is just so asinine. Like I don't know how people can't see, and I'm doing a terrible job trying to articulate it, but it's like that pattern, that system, the ways that things have ran and operated for our recorded history and time is resulting in exactly the same thing over and over and over and over again. The people at the very top of the pyramid are getting exactly what they want, while everybody underneath them is suffering and dying and being manipulated and used. And it's like that dynamic just plays out over and over and over and over again. And typically the people at the top of the pyramid are men, right? And people underneath. I mean, it's just like, it doesn't make sense to me why we don't see that aspect of it. Like you can have everything at play. You can have everything on the table. You can have all genders, all identifications. You can have the entire full range of spectrum of everything. And it does not take away how you feel about yourself. It does not take away the importance of whatever you deem important. It doesn't eliminate, like suddenly my masculinity isn't called into question. I just get to simply be who I am and how I am.
Yeah.
Right. It's starting to become, it's like, how many times are we going to have to repeat this same thing again, over and over and over again, until we learn, oh, this is the same thing.
Right.
Right. We're doing the same thing over and over and again. They just overturned Roe v. Wade. We've been here. We've done this before. Yeah. We see what this leads to. We see what the cause of this is. We see how this perpetuates the same thing over and over and over again. And it's like, why? Why do we keep doing that? Do you know what I mean? It's frustrating. And this is just one example of, like, it's not leading to the downfall of our civilization. It's leading to potentially the evolutionary change that needs to take place if we're going to move forward. And there's people that are going to resist that, obviously.
Absolutely. And it's like this whole thing, that protection you were speaking of earlier. Like if we're taking more of a love approach as opposed to that like rawr, that fire, that domineering energy that you're saying that makes susceptible, like what are they protecting against? The same exact energy. So it's like the snake eating its own tail.
Yeah.
With it. It's to where if the whole was allowed to let this fall, if the whole collective was allowed everybody to have their place to sit at the table, the need for the fighting, the war, the domineering, I don't know. I feel like I get glassed over on that because I can see a really big picture of how
glassed over.
Yeah. Like, oh, that's not real. Like I just like at that point, I think it's possible if we all just, boy, I'm feeling really, I'm feeling very, that helped my emotions right now. That helped me trying to find my words. I feel somebody has to put the sword down first, you know, and everybody holding up their swords to be ready and to fight. Just when we're just talking about this masculinity in a sense, somebody has to do it first to show the others it can be done. That doesn't mean that if you put it down, you're surrendering and that you're going to get taken. Like, maybe. But have we tried that? Like, let's try that.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
You know that, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
Like, I'm all for no more war. And not just from the perspective of like, oh, that's a peaceful world and everything like that. And like, just no more.
Yeah.
At this point in time, it doesn't serve anybody any good at all. Like, it's not those are all big tangents and not caveats, but big offshoots of what we're talking about.
Yeah. More power. Somebody has resources. Great. There's resources. Yeah. Why is that not celebrated? Why is that something that has to be taken over?
Yeah.
Like, resources. Great.
Right. Resources for humanity.
Yeah. That works. There's room for everybody. There is enough.
Yeah.
There is enough. I don't know. It's all seeming so, like, I don't know. It's just all seeming so pointless, you know?
This continued way that we're
like
through.
If it's, anyways, I need you to start speaking. I feel too, like, first of all, just like, yes, I'm not new to hate. I've been hearing the hate and the rhetoric and the way that people are trying to use God, religion, use anything that is not the so-called society's defined society's norm. Like, where did that even come from? You know, anything that is outside of that, anything that does not support the ultimate pyramid scheme, the ultimate MLM of the patriarchy sitting on top with all of its, you know, anything that doesn't support that is being so viciously attacked. And to the point of death, you have people calling for the death of LGBTQ. You have people, like, obviously the death of other races isn't something that is new. That is like anything other than white have been in this from the beginning, fighting for life, fighting for existence, fighting for any type of like place at the table. And now it is hitting LGBT, it's hitting women, it's like all of this. Like, this battle has been for so much longer. I can't get my words out. I hate that. I am so frustrated and upset right now and emotionally charged about this, and knowing that I don't have the information that I need to have to be able to have this conversation, that my words aren't coming out. I just feel all this emotion in my body and all I want to do is cry. I'm like, this is so sad. How is this woman out there saying this? Like, what is, like, how does your brain work that way? Where is your soul that is what you are
Well, you have women
perpetrating.
That are, you have women that are, like, for example, the recent Supreme Court ruling. You have women that are in support of that.
I know. It's just, it makes me sick. I don't understand that. I don't understand. And
I think I have an understanding of it.
Okay.
I mean, from my perspective, and I mean, take it for what it's worth, right? It's my understanding of it. It's not to say it's right or anything like that, but it's just societal programming. Like, it makes total sense to me that you would have a woman that was born, raised, and brought up in this culture and in this patriarchy that would think that that's a good idea.
Is she from America, or is she from, like, I've never heard of this
I'm not
woman.
talking about her anymore.
You're talking about
the Roe v. Wade decision.
Yeah.
Where you have women that are in support of that, right?
Yeah.
That they are indoctrinated into either the religion, and truthfully, it's the same type of indoctrination. It's the same type of programming that takes place. Like, when you're born into a religious family, then that's your belief system that everything is structured and based upon. And when you're born into this culture, you have the exact same structure and belief system that is indoctrinated and downloaded into your brain. So you don't really see it as I mean, that's how it happens. That's how you have women that think that it's a good idea that they overturned Roe v. Wade.
They're twisted. What I don't like.
They're not twisted.
Okay. I don't have to. I think that they're twisted. I think that their agreements and their beliefs and everything they've got is so twisted inside. And for them to be, I think it is a very destructive, and I don't believe that is at the core. So I do believe it's a twisted.
What do you think's at the core?
Well, I guess I'm just ridiculous enough to believe that once everybody does their own work and dives in, that their core is good.
Oh yeah,
that their core is love. So regardless of, and I understand they think. I see what you mean.
They're not at the core. They're not that. They're not that.
I don't believe
they're
that.
Not that person.
And that's hard.
It's just the program.
It's the programming.
Yeah.
And like other things that have been like popping up in this space, it takes us away from gender. So I don't know if we want to go on this or if we want to stick with the gender. I realize I'm doing a terrible job because my emotions are getting the best of me. So I'm more reactive instead of active in this.
Your emotions are great, babe.
They make for a very well articulated podcast, that's for sure.
They're important.
They are important, but I want to do more than just feel. I want to be able to articulate in a way that can help.
So another part of this conversation, because this concept and idea that we started the episode with, it sparked a lot inside of me. And It's the same old story for me. It's like, what can I do about it? What can I do about it? What can I do about it?
Yeah.
We talk about it on the podcast. We can bring it to the attention of the people that listen to this podcast. We can spark other ideas and concepts and things like that, right? Excuse me. And the biggest thing that I think any of us can do, and the biggest thing that I always bring it back to myself, is I'll just do my own work.
Yeah.
I just continually can do my own work, right? And I know for me personally, and maybe this is why this has hit a nerve for me recently, is because a large chunk of what my work has been lately has been in the realm of balancing masculine and feminine, has been dissecting those programs and those subconscious understandings of what masculine and feminine are and everything in between, and trying to reevaluate and not just understand, but bounce those two energies and bounce those two ideas and those two concepts, both energetically, subconsciously, but then also externally in practicality and in our life and in the way that I move through the world and everything like that. Really shifting all of those things up and readdressing that. And struggle isn't even accurate, but just that internal blending of those two energies, masculine and feminine, inside of myself. So that's my work.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been doing. And that's what I think will help in this issue.
Yeah.
Right? In this problem, in this bigger overarching thing that we have going on right now, where the patriarchy is like doubling down on all of their patriarchal bullshit.
Right.
To continually maintain control, instead of taking the opportunity to just look at, oh, maybe we don't need to oppress women or the LGBTQ community or other races in order to exist.
Yeah.
That maybe there's another way of doing it.
I heard a person describe this in a way that is really obvious, but I guess I'd never heard it before. And it was talking about masculine and feminine energies and what it is to be a man, what it is to be a woman, and how you hear be a man. It's like, but boys aren't being taught how to be a man or to be a healthy man. They are told to be a man, but the only thing that they are taught is how to not be a girl, how to not be feminine. And anytime they do something that's deemed bad, they're called, are you crying like a little girl? Or you're acting like a girl, you're weak like a girl. Everything that they do that is bad is being explained to them as being a feminine trait. So the programming starts off with women are just bad, women are weak, women are like everything that is wrong with society. And the only way to be worth anything is to be a man. And there's no healthiness taught. Being a man means not being a woman. And that was just like, so, I don't know. I hadn't heard that before, but I knew I also got part of that. You know, you don't want to be like a girl. You don't want to be a girly girl. You don't want to be, you know, you got to show your masculine strength. You have to get the men's approval. It's still geared the same. It's like trying to even work the femininity out of women. However, women aren't allowed to be like that masculine, because then there's something wrong with them. They're supposed to still be feminine, because we serve a purpose, which is to entertain the men, to please the men, to provide for the men, to be sexual for the men, not too sexual, just sexual for one. Like all of this like bullshit. Like it's the I don't know. So what are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on men are not taught to how to be masculine? They are taught to not be women.
Yeah, I mean the way that it is taught is don't be feminine.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not done consciously. It's not like, here's the lesson that I'm teaching you in order to be a man. It's don't be a woman. But like you said, all the subconscious ways that it's programmed and taught, where if you're weak, then you're feminine. If you're crying, then you're feminine. If you're feeling something, then you're feminine. And then you just enter in any derogatory term in reference to the feminine.
Yeah.
And then it's like you said, right? They serve a purpose. Mm-hmm. The woman is there for what? It's there for a reason, for a purpose. It's serving in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. And there's also another aspect of it where you don't have, like, we have a big generational gap that dates back to probably, I mean, much earlier. And this is, it's hard when we talk about things and we feel stupid.
Yeah.
You and I feel stupid a lot when we try to talk about things, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It doesn't mean that we need to stop talking about things just because we feel stupid.
Keep learning.
But like at the beginning of the turn of the century, we had these big wars that took place, right? World War I, World War II, so on and so forth up until now, right? So for the past 100 years, the country's been at war. Who goes to war? Men go to war, which means we have a huge swath of time where young boys aren't being raised by men. They're being raised by women. And the way that women raise men is also how to be a man is don't be like a woman.
Yeah.
Right?
It keeps, like, how does that go on both sides?
Right? It's so wacky.
Yeah.
That you would have, because that's the thing, like you would think that over the course of the last 100 years where we've had all of these men out there either at war or in the workforce, right? It's not the men that have been staying home raising our babies. It's women that have been staying home raising our babies. And you would think that that would have somehow fixed the problem, because then you'd have a bunch of women raising the last 100 years worth of humans, but yet it's still perpetuating the patriarchy. It's still perpetuating this really broken dynamic. Mm-hmm. And that's because women are programmed in the same way, where you have women teaching their sons how to be a man, which means you have to be strong, not weak like a woman. You have to shut down those emotions. You can't cry. You know, all of these things and all of these dynamics that are taking place.
Yeah, not just teaching our sons, teaching our daughters.
Right.
The same. That's what I had. Don't let them see you cry. Like, I had to be tough. Yeah. My emotions do not serve a place. And then you try to make your daughters strong so they can survive in the man
be
world.
Successful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All of these things. Emotions are okay. You can't show your emotions. You have to hide. Like, if you give into that, it's like, even now, being emotional on the podcast, being emotional shuts my voice off.
Right.
I lose my ability to speak because I am so programmed that my emotions are bad. I still feel like that, and I hate that. And I feel like I can't show up with my emotions. And thank you for saying, you know, it's beautiful that I need it, but then I can't talk. I can't talk. I'm doing the work. I know this. And I still can't figure out how to get my voice to work when I'm highly emotional.
But maybe that's the whole thing, is because in order to get your voice to work while being highly emotional, you have to control and shut down the emotion in order to articulate,
instead of just letting those emotions go.
Emotion.
Right?
Like maybe the articulation and the speaking through the emotion isn't the goal.
Maybe.
maybe that's part of the
Let's
problem
try this.
again, right? Maybe you just get to have the emotional outburst, expression, feeling, and the inability to speak. And that should be the goal.
And that should be the goal.
That it shouldn't be, hold on, I have to be able to articulate through this and shut this emotion down.
It's so hard because you don't get heard. You won't get listened to immediately. Like, how many people, like, if you're still here listening to this, like, how close were you to turning it off? How many people do you think actually turned it off?
Yeah.
Because they weren't getting, all they were hearing was emotion and trying to push through. People do not take the time to listen through emotion. They do not.
That's what we value, right? So we don't value that as an expression, or like there isn't a value to that. There isn't a value to emotional expression. Like, hurry up and feel that emotion and then tell me what you're thinking or feeling.
Right.
Like, let's get on with the conversation. And it's like, no. Like, the value is in the expression of the feeling. The value is in the feeling itself and the ability to not just express it outwardly, however it comes out. And that doesn't mean being able to articulate it with your words. That means being able to feel it externally.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't have to be held in internally.
All emotion.
Right. And that, I think, is massively important.
Yeah.
Where if we're going to shift and change, right, all of these different things, it's no longer like you have to be like a man or don't be like a woman. Like, we just have to open up and broaden the spectrum with which we're allowed to feel, communicate, express, and show emotion. Emotion is so, I mean, you and I talk about it all the time, and we experience it all the time, and it's like reiterated over and over and over and over and over again. And yet we still struggle with the expression of emotion.
Yeah.
And the feeling of said emotion. And every emotion that's felt has to be like categorized, classified, placed into a box. So then that somehow makes it easier to understand and or express instead of just allow.
Makes it safe. Big emotions are scary.
Right. Makes it safe.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. Like I said, I get lost in the big spectrum of what these issues mean. And do I think the downfall of Western civilization is happening right now? I don't.
Yeah.
But I think that times are a-changing. And I think it's about goddamn time that they change.
Right.
And the resistance to that change is futile.
Yeah.
It's just completely, in my mind, there's just every single generation that goes by, things shift and change. And there are things that people hold on to and think that we had it better with previous generations. And this new generation is going to be the thing that is the undoing, right?
Yeah.
And so we hold on to all of these things. And some of them are very silly and simple, right? Like, people get all caught up about music and think that the music from our generation was so much better and the music today is garbage.
Everybody thinks the music from their generation was so much better.
Right.
Like, that's a
common
staple.
thing, right? And it's somehow we can see that dynamic and understand it. And music's important, right? It has its role in society and culture and everything like that. And we can see that thing that takes place and that thing that happens, but yet we don't see it with the bigger things.
Yeah.
And do you know what I mean? Like, the way that you were raised and the way that you were taught to be a woman, as well as like the things that we deemed important, have shifted and changed.
Yeah.
And if we want to hold on to that and think that this is the way that things always should have been, that's the problem. Like, things are supposed to evolve and change. That's just simply the progression of the way that things move.
Yeah.
So we don't need to resist it. And we don't need to like, oh, it's got to be the same way that it's always been. No, because everything dies.
Yeah.
Everything. Beliefs, ideas, humans, everything dies. So hold on to it is futile. It's just, it's the expenditure of energy that is used to hold on to this dying thing.
Right. Thinking it's not going to die.
Thinking it's not going to die.
Yeah.
Right. If we need to, like, masculinity needs to change.
Yeah.
And the way that it has exhibited and been in existence over the course of history and time, right? It needs to change. It's not healthy. It's destructive. It's manipulative. It's
the way that it's been taught and exuded. Yeah.
Yeah. It needs to change.
It does.
And we can either hold on to it and think that this is the downfall of civilization and we have to fight back against it.
Right.
Or we can realize that it needs to die so that the next thing can be born and the next thing can be born and the next thing can be born. That's what I think.
Yeah. You know, there's so many different like perspectives and so many different ways to look at things, and letting things die, like there's a death rebirth cycle. So like that letting things die allows the rebirth. I've learned some interesting things since Roe v. Wade being overturned.
Okay.
First of all, when Roe v. Wade was overturned, I sobbed. Like I can still feel that in me. I'm just like, what is happening? Heartbroken and terrified for my daughters. Terrified. And I can still feel that. And I'm like, how does this happen? But what I've learned since that, because the world that we live in now, where like we have ways to communicate, and yes, there's algorithms and there's propaganda and there's direction and we're being fed in other things, but also more voices are getting out there. So what I've learned since Roe v. Wade being overturned is something that a lot of I guess white women are now learning. I had no idea until this structure started falling of how much oppression, how much more was happening. I didn't know. Like my experience has been having friends that have talked with doctors about wanting to get, like women friends of wanting to get their tubes tied, but they didn't have enough kids yet for that. And they would have to have a spouse to agree with that. Like that's real conversation we've had. They're too young to get their tubes tied. Women are not allowed, white women are not allowed to make that choice to not have babies. And now white women are not allowed to even terminate if that is going to kill them. Like we have like so many things that I don't need to go over right now because we know it's there. I had no idea that BIPOC women were having forced sterilizations. I had no idea. I didn't know because that was not something like we didn't know. How was that possible that we didn't know that these women were being, so they could not have children, that they were having that choice taken away, and that if there have been Indigenous and BIPOC women that have had miscarriages and have been charged for that. So now that they're in the system, so now that they're in prison, so now that they're not able to vote, they're having their rights taken away, that now they are being kept for labor, that legalized bullshit on how they do it. I had no idea. And how much of the world, at least in this country, had no idea. And maybe I'm a select few that didn't know. Maybe that is just my complete white privilege. It's not maybe, that's absolutely my white privilege on that. But how could it be so unknown? And so this being overturned is like created this heartbreaking, wrenching awareness. But now these things are not getting unnoticed. Now, instead of being, like how this horrible like thing has been taken away from us, this horrible right, now we can see what is actually happening. So instead of it just being like fighting for this right, it brings back to everybody having a seat at the table, because how could this have been unnoticed? Like I feel horrible, but this isn't about how I feel. This is about making it a difference. Like, did you know that?
No.
Right? Isn't that just like, so now what we're changing,
go ahead,
and the way that this is going to shift or not, I don't know what's going to happen, whether it all falls away, but it's now, like, I don't want it just to be Roe v. Wade. I want whatever is coming next that is inclusive, that is protecting women, that is protecting genders, that is protecting without war. Like, it doesn't need to be a fight. But if they're making it you know what I mean?
But if they're making
it a fight, like then, what? Because they're holding it. But what if we just stop?
Right.
And that doesn't mean surrender.
Just there's another way.
There's another way.
Like that idea of if they're making it a fight, like it doesn't need to be a fight, but if you're going to make it a fight, then we're going to show up and fight.
Yeah, and I feel that.
That's masculine. Like that's a patriarchy belief. That's a subconscious programming that's the only way that you're going to win and achieve.
And it's this like duality that I feel because like, no, we're just not going to participate.
Right.
And then I have the flip side that says, you think masculinity is strong? You have no idea.
Right.
So it's like the both because I'm like, we don't need to fight.
Exactly. It doesn't need to fight. There doesn't need to be a fight.
But I'm ready to fight. So what is that? There's that like that duality in myself. And I can't sit here and pretend like they both don't exist and live in me. They both exist and live in me.
Can you hold them both?
Gonna try.
Right. When we have these paradoxes, these two things that we can see the stark difference between those two things, the need to not fight and then the desire to fight, right? The realization that by standing, like there's a dynamic of like stand up for your rights in opposition to the oppressive government, the oppressive thing that's trying to oppress you and take away your rights. You have to resist that by standing up against that. But in doing so, you're perpetuating the same cycle of this dynamic of fight, right? This war, this battle, this thing where like if there wasn't somebody on the other end of the battlefield, then what would happen to that war? Right. What would happen to that thing?
There would be no war. There's nobody to fight.
Right. Then it would suddenly, like, this is all this is a massive oversimplification. This isn't thinking that this is the way to solve all of these problems. This isn't the answer. This is just a perspective, and this is just a thought. This is something to entertain, where I think this all the time in regards to all of these different issues that we're trying to fix and remedy. We're using the same tactics and techniques that we are in opposition to, right? Yeah. Like you're going to, like, for example, get out and vote.
Right. I think that's important. And you don't.
Not only do I not think it's important,
yeah.
I think it's brainwash manipulation that has been implemented by the patriarchy to convince you that that's going to do a fucking thing.
Well, it's like
it hasn't done one fucking thing since the beginning of voting.
It's because we can't get, like, the people that are being voted for have already surpassed
from the beginning of our country, where we thought, oh, we're going to tell we're going to get together a bunch of fucking rich white people and we're going to create this thing and we're going to tell the people that we rule over that they're going to have power because we're going to give them the opportunity to vote. And not from the very first fucking vote that was cast did it make one fucking bit of difference.
They still already have it. Who's going to win is who's going to win. It still is not up to the people. It is... What did you just, would your phone just open?
Oh my, okay. Sorry. That was my phone is reacting to my outrage.
Emotions.
But that rhetoric, that dynamic, right?
Yeah.
The idea that we're going to make this change and implementation by getting out and voting is the same thing that keeps getting perpetuated over and over and over and over again. Yeah. It's literally the patriarchy telling you, oh, you don't like what we've done to you? Go vote and change it.
Right. But meanwhile,
what you're doing is you're voting in a system that they created and that they still are ruling over.
Right. There's very little that is actually like accomplished in the voting because you have money, which is what you need to be on the ballot. But if you just like look at the top and then have the trickle down, the president is chosen by the electoral college, not the popular vote. Mm-hmm. So already right there, your vote does not matter.
Correct.
They get to they're supposed to take it into consideration, but they're putting their ballots in for who they want.
Correct.
Be damned with the popular vote. The president is then the one who appoints their team and appoints the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
So again, that has nothing to do with the vote. And then how those laws go in from the people that are not voted in, that's not a vote. Then that trickles down to what the cabinet is and to how it goes. So the system is broken, but it's that throwing out rocks, pebbles to make you feel like you're doing something.
Exactly.
I see that.
It's placation.
And we still have opportunity. I can't get past that part. So I understand the placation, but I know that if we stop at least trying there, like that can't be where it ends. It's like you vote, you've done your part, and you're done. No, that's okay. We can agree to disagree on that one. I understand that it is not changing it, but I also understand that we can start changing it from the ground up. And that's what happens when we start changing it from the ground up, when we start melting those sugar cubes in that construct that is at the bottom, the top's going to fall.
But do you think that voting has anything to do with that? Or does it just placate people and make them feel like they're actually doing something?
I think voting absolutely has something to do with it, the way that it's set up right now, because they are also working really hard on keeping voters in the hands of the patriarchy and keeping it that way. They're trying their damnedest to keep voting away from
that's what I'm saying is
BIPOC,
exactly.
females. So if voting, I think because they're trying like hell to keep voices silenced and only allow a certain amount of selected voices to speak.
So it's the machine that they built and that they operate.
And we can break it.
With voting?
I think that's a start.
So we can.
It's a start. It's a point. It doesn't matter how you argue it. This point right here is a part of it.
What I'm saying is, my argument is that energy that it's expended upon get out and vote and thinking that that's going to change anything is pissing in the wind. And if you really want to change the patriarchy and the dynamic of the way that the system works, you need to stop participating in the system that they created. You're literally playing the game that they created. And then you're upset that you're not winning. Stop playing the fucking game.
I think I agree. Stop playing the game. It's by their rules.
It has nothing to do with their rules.
If we just stop voting, if everybody stops voting, then they're going to have the same patriarchy. So, they're going to have the same top. I don't agree with you.
Hold on a sec, because it plays back earlier to what I said, right? If everybody stopped voting, then what would happen?
The same exact thing.
Hold on.
The same people would be in charge.
Hold on, let me get my point out.
I don't want to lay your point out. Your point
what would happen if nobody showed up to the other side of the battlefield?
I don't see that there. The same people would be in charge, only they would like have the kingdom without anything. So it's not the battlefield, it's defending the walls. If nobody's attacking the walls, then there's nothing to stop. So and I'm not perpetuating
it's like a board
fighting.
Game.
I'm perpetuating like coming out of like using our voices. There is more people on the bottom, obviously a pyramid. There's very little on top. There's so much of us, and it's really sickening that it takes when it's a problem, it doesn't get to be seen as a problem until it becomes a white problem. Then all of a sudden it's a problem. Like, that's bullshit. That needs to change, but that's where we are. But there are more of us on the bottom. I'm not talking about overthrowing. I'm not talking about violence, but I'm talking about a change.
Correct. I totally agree. I think that all that time and energy that's invested in trying to convince people to get out and vote and thinking that that is somehow going to change could be better suited to activate that base of people. Like you said, there's more, like if women met together.
So like sovereign society kind of thing?
It has nothing to do, because once again, those are all patriarchal concepts and ideas and beliefs.
I'm trying to wrap my head around things.
Think about like
if we quit putting money into the system, if we could all figure out how to take care of each other with bartering and trading, going back to that, the system would fall. If we were like farmers and goods and taking care of each other.
Yes.
That would be a big hit. If we stopped putting money into the system,
right,
that would be a big hit.
And instead of putting the money into that system, create the system that you want to put the money into.
Yes. They make it illegal to collect rainwater. They know this information.
So that's my argument is it's a massive, like, high level manipulation technique where I'm going to create the game and the rules and the structure of the game. And I'm going to implement things into that structure that make you think you have the ability to change the outcome of the game. But at the end of the day, all money goes into my pocket.
Yeah, maybe. Like, that's definitely how it's constructed. But I still haven't got to the part where I cannot see the power in a vote. I still have hope there. And I know it's got to start like at the very, very, very bottom.
See, that's the thing that I'm talking about is that's the dynamic that I see as continued program. And like you said earlier, where it's hard for you to understand how a woman could, like, it's such a brain fuck for you to see how women could think that Roe v. Wade was a good thing or that overturning it was a good thing because of the programming that went into it.
You said two very different things there.
Right? So it was really hard and challenging for you to understand, or like this feminist woman that thinks that, transgendered is the downfall of culture. Like, it's so hard to see how they could think that way.
Yes.
And it's because they're programmed and indoctrinated into that way of thinking. You have been programmed and indoctrinated into the way of thinking that voting does a fucking thing.
Right. To the point. Not to a point. No, to a point. But I think your way of thinking is that you're just like, I'm not going to do anything and expect change. And if this doesn't do it, then why do anything? You still have to do things. You have to show up and you're like, well, I'm just not going to do it because I'm just not participating.
That's not my way of thinking.
That's what it looks like.
And
like, do something.
Exactly. Do something.
Okay. Well, what are your thoughts? What is better than voting?
Doing your own work.
Okay. So I'm doing my own work. And
what's next?
Yes.
Get together with people and create what you want, separate from what everything else is going on, right? Like, if there's a battlefield, don't go over there. Go over here and do what you want to do. Don't try to play a game. Like, everybody's over here playing Monopoly.
Yeah.
And who created Monopoly, right? That old dude with the white hat, the white, like Colonel Sanders created Monopoly.
Does he have, what are those called? Not a barnacle.
See, we're so dumb.
No, I can't think of all I can think of is barnacles, and that's not it. I know that's not it, but it's the same. It's something stuck on you. A bifocal.
But it's not bifocals or...
No, yeah, it's not. It's
a monocle.
Monocle. See, I was close. Barnacle, monocle.
Rich white dude with a monocle.
Does your Monopoly guy have a monocle?
Yeah.
Yeah? That's another mandala effect.
Okay. Where
apparently it doesn't.
Okay. Squirrel,
why not?
But that's the way that I see it. And the game that was created for us at the founding of this country was created by rich white men.
Yes.
Slave owners, rich white men, plain and simple, right? And we're still playing the same game that they created. And there's people in the game that are pissed off that they're losing when the game was designed so that they would lose. And like they gave you an infrastructure, they gave you a set of rules that follow these rules and you'll win. Follow these rules and this is how we live society and this is how society functions. And we rule the rights of everybody. When in reality, from the inception of the game, they designed it so that those rules only worked in their favor.
Okay, if we don't change it, though, then you still have the military and the police that are enforcing their game.
So once again, if we don't change it, they don't allow for the rules to be changed to the game because they created it.
Yeah.
They created the Supreme Court so that you couldn't change the rules.
I agree that. I know. That's why I'm talking. We need to dissolve it from the ground up.
Or just stop playing that game.
Maybe.
So we have examples of it in some way.
But the structure is, maybe that's where it gets to. The money, but I think it is reckless and irresponsible.
Which is the programming that they gave you.
Maybe you are completely right and I am completely wrong. Maybe I am just portraying this and going, but when I see trying to oppress and take away the rights and strip it, then it's because there's a power there that they do not want the bottom of the pyramid to have.
It's just money.
Regardless, I feel it's important. And
I feel it's important too. But what I feel is important, what I feel is going to be the solution is no longer playing that game.
I think that's where it gets to, is where it changes.
And I think the sooner we can acknowledge that, then the sooner that game goes away.
Yeah. Maybe.
And it's not, oh, now let's recreate a new game. It's like, oh, let's actually recreate a new society. Let's recreate a new way of operating, a completely new way of doing things that has nothing to do with that infrastructure that they created, because that was created so that rich white men could continue to stay rich and white.
I agree with that completely.
So I don't understand how you can, if you agree with that completely, then how can you think that voting does anything?
Because they are trying to stop the majority from having a vote. They are trying to keep it in the hands of those that will perpetuate the broken system that they are desperately hanging on to.
If it hasn't worked in the past 200 and however, like 1776 or whenever, right? When was our country founded, right? If it hasn't worked in the past 250 years, why is it going to start working today?
Because it has been played by that set of rules.
Exactly. It's a game that was designed by them.
So how do you not play the game and not have I don't know. I think we're just at we are at a standstill here. You have your opinion. I have mine. I think we're both trying to get to the same place.
Yeah.
And what would be helpful here is figuring out how to work together. Me not being
instead of me trying to convince you of my.
And same.
Right.
And same. I know that right now the goal is to limit the amount of people that can vote. And what I see with that is that's a problem. That is a big problem. Mm-hmm. If they are limiting that, then it's because there is an opportunity there. I feel like the collective voice is where shift happens. And the way that the system is now, yes, it needs to change. And as wonderful as it would be to have this dimension, just have it flip and change, it's a process. And it's not you got to play the game, get up, go to work, pay your bills, work on your credit, pay your taxes. That's not the process I'm talking about. It's about doing things completely different, coming together and collectively changing the way that it is done, starting from the ground up, dissolving it. And the more that the bottom of the pyramid comes together and realizes this is where the power is. We're literally the support for the pyramid. We change the support, it comes down.
The bottom of the pyramid is what runs the MLM, right? Yeah, if they stopped feeding the MLM, then what happens, right? That MLM goes away.
And what I could see happening is if the collective came and the vote was starting to change, because the way it is right now, it looks like they're playing by the rules and having the power. Mm-hmm. But if this came into where everyone that could vote did vote, and they even the restriction of the times that they're doing everything they can to restrict it.
There you go again with that dogma.
But
if enough of us get out
don't
and
say
vote.
There you go again. That's rude. Anyways, what I could see happening from that is if they did have a large turnout, then the top would just, like the Supreme Court, they would overturn the voting. They would then take it away. They would show that that construct is not going to work. They would take it away, and those who are going to be in charge are going to be appointed by the top down. That dogma, as you said, would continue, and that alone would shake it up again. All of these things are a part of taking the control, not the control back, but taking, I don't know, leveling it out, leveling the playing field, melting it down.
Yeah.
I think it's a step, and I think we need to start taking those steps instead of just sitting back and being well, it should be this. You're right, it should be this, but it's not. So let's take steps.
So you asked earlier, you're like, okay, if you're not going to vote, then what? Like you articulated that you thought my thought or my plan was just not vote and then don't do anything, right?
Well,
and expect change to happen.
Like sticking it to home, just won't vote then.
Right.
It's only hurting.
That's not the solution.
Okay.
In my mind, the solution is not like, fuck the government, I'm just not going to vote because my vote doesn't matter. You're right. Your vote doesn't matter.
So what's your solution?
All the time and energy that is invested into getting the idea that we need to get enough people out to vote.
Okay.
Take all of that energy and all of those resources and all of that money and all of that stuff and put it somewhere else. Where, first and foremost, what else could we be doing?
Yeah.
What else would be some options? Let's get curious and creative and come up with some other things than trying to formulate ideas and beliefs and thoughts using the infrastructure that they gave us. So
I'm
it's
open
like,
to that.
rather than trying to create new ways of doing the same thing, using the same rules that they provided, use all of that energy and passion and drive and infrastructure and money and desire to change, remove it from the system, right? Take it out of the game and bring it over here, and let's start getting real fucking creative. Let's start getting real curious.
I will have that conversation.
Let's start wondering, what if we all stopped voting?
Okay.
What if we all started investing into something else? What if we all started pooling our resources? What if we started creating other forms of infrastructure and healthcare and other things? Like healthcare is a governmentally owned and operated system, even though it's not funded by the government, right? But it's exactly, right? What if it became something that was something different? It's all just a matter of money. And if we all pooled those resources together, then what could happen? Then what could get created?
Yeah.
What could we come up with as alternative solutions that existed outside of the game? Like, if you want to change the government and the way that the infrastructure and society and everything works, then start creating what you actually want to happen.
Okay.
And stop trying to play the game in the ways that they designed, right? If I don't like Monopoly, I don't just continue to play Monopoly.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just gonna go if we have Monopoly, that game's going in the garbage. I don't know if we have it, but I have loathing that at this point.
I'm going to stop playing Monopoly, and I'm going to think about what else I would like. What do I actually want to do with my life, and what else do I actually want to create, and what do I want to build?
Okay.
And start getting really creative and curious about that.
Well, that feels better than just like ridiculing and just refusing to vote, refusing to play. It feels like on
top of do your own work.
Okay.
On top of heal your shit. On top of like go inside and actually start feeling and expressing and connecting and doing all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking that fucking transgender mania is going to lead to the downfall of society.
That's a mask.
Right?
That's like one of their tools. Like all of these are little tools to keep people in place and to keep people in line so they can have that, and to keep the bottom of the pyramid feeding each other.
Yeah, feeding the top.
So if we are too busy fighting each other, then we can't see what's happening.
Yeah, just feeding the top.
It's like Monsters Inc. Like scaring and getting the energy is keeping this going. When laughter and connection is made, then it all changes. So as long as like these constructs keep happening and unity is not a thing, and the division keeps.
Yeah.
There's a lot of how can I word this? Like it goes back to your inner work. There's a lot of self-reflecting and willing to be wrong and willing to do things different and willing to look at the ways that you have been harmful that needs to be able to happen. And people have such a hard time with that. They don't want to be wrong. They don't want to be the fault. They don't want to have to look at the righteous will stay righteous.
Yeah.
Instead of like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, we were wrong. We made some mistakes. Right.
I've been a part of the problem. I'm sitting here, women's rights. You're taking away women's rights. and did not see. I had no idea of the rights that were being stripped right, like right in plain sight, that I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Like that sucks. And I have to look at that and say, no more. I was wrong. How hurtful I have been with that, how part of the problem I have been, and change the way that I'm helping women's rights.
Yeah.
So we all have to be willing to be wrong. Again, be wrong, have done it wrong, have caused harm, whether intentionally or not, and be able to be willing to be wrong and do it different. Again and again and again and again.
Right? Challenge all beliefs that you have, ideas about things, because why? Everything dies.
Even voting. Not everything dies, but like challenge all the beliefs.
Everything does die.
Right. I know, but like I said that like right after. And I'm like, oh, I meant that like 2 seconds before.
I love you.
I love you too.
I'm not fighting you.
I'm still going to vote until I figure out a better way to do it. And I'm open for that conversation. I love your shirt, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. I love you.
I love you
and
too.
I'm not angry with you, and I'm not upset.
I am upset.
Yes.
And I'm activated. I'm not upset or activated with you.
Good.
I am like, I don't want to go look at the stuff that she is saying, because I very much have been in that space of like, I'm not going to give that energy.
Mm-hmm.
And now I realize that I'm not going to give that energy has allowed things to just,
right.
Like, I need to look at that. I need to look at that. So I need to go figure.
So as you look at that, as you go and research this woman, Camille Paglia, as you research and you look at that and you go find her clip on YouTube and you watch her little speech, just feel what comes up inside of you.
I could feel it now. I'm just thinking about that.
And sit with that feeling.
Yeah.
Right? If this episode has brought stuff up inside of you,
you're welcome.
Just feel it. Just allow it to be felt rather than intellectually come up with your argument in opposition to what we've just said and how we're wrong and fuck these guys and turn this off. Or maybe you totally agree with us and you're like, yes. Yeah. That's great if you totally agree with us. And it's great if you totally disagree with us. The idea is feel whatever that is that's coming up in you and just feel it, for hell's sakes. Just allow it to be felt. And if you want to share whatever came up for you and whatever you're feeling, we would love to hear it.
Right.
You can reach out and send us a message and tell us what came up for you in this episode. So,
one more awareness before we type out.
Let's go.
You're like,
before we tap out.
Yeah, whatever words. I don't think type out. End. Control Alt Delete.
Yes, one more thought.
I am still going to vote. I am still at this point in time going to do what I can to speak out and have everybody have the right to vote. And I'm looking at the fact that you were not raised on a military base and you see the bullshit of it. And I was raised on a military base. Government in my home, government everywhere. And I'm like, no, voting is very... So I'm going to look at both of those. And don't with your like, I'm just like, I see that I have to sit with both of those.
That there might be some programming.
There might be some programming also.
And it might be like really, really, really ingrained subconscious programming.
Also, they tried to keep a voice out of the mouths of those that could change it. So I think there's power in the voice. You're like, what the fuck did you just say? I think there's power in the voice and it needs to be used. And they're trying to squash this. So I'm like, I
totally agree.
But I'm at a, what is this? I'm at a paradox here.
Like there's power in the voice, right? Which is why we have a podcast.
See? Oh God, my boob hurts. Why is my boob hurts? I'm getting boob pain.
Your voice matters and it's important. And I would argue that this podcast and you sharing your opinions and your thoughts and your emotions and your feelings and everything that you do on this podcast is far more impactful than your vote.
Yes. Oh man, it's so hard. It's so hard. I'm like, yes. And I'm not going to say votes don't matter when they're working so hard to keep voting not available to everyone, and when they're trying to control the population that can vote. Can you see how it's like?
What I see,
Yeah, we're not done, folks.
what I see is the game that they designed.
Yeah.
So from the beginning, who could vote? White men,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And today, who is controlling the game?
White men.
White men.
And who are they trying to keep only at the
And
polls?
Not only are they the ones that are controlling the game, they are the ones that have programmed everybody that's played the game for the past 200 years. That's why you have women and people of all racial backgrounds, colors, and creeds that believe the way that they believe that this system is actually working, because white men are the ones that built it, and they're the ones that have programmed, meaning downloaded their genetic material as well as societal programming for the last 200 years. So they are like happy as clams, thinking that, like, they want you to think that voting matters.
Yeah. Mm.
Because what are you doing?
But then they keep the highest powers unvotable.
Right? Right? You think your vote matters. Why in the fuck does the president elect and pick and choose the Supreme Court justices? And why in the fuck is that a lifetime appointment?
Yeah.
Right? Why?
So many things. So many things.
So many things. So I would offer up, maybe just look at the possibility that your vote is doing nothing other than perpetuating the patriarchy. And I think we should end it on that note. Is there anything else, babe?
I don't know.
Okay. It's frustrating. It's hard. Who knows?
Your pen is not working now. Your pen's like, I left
The
this
pen is
number.
mightier than the sword. I shall scribble things and write things. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for listening.